So Jake recently posted an article on our Facebook page about a penny that sold at auction for $200,000. We received a lot of comments on the Facebook page about that and thought it might be fun to share some fun penny facts with you guys. So Jake, tell us a little bit about the research you did and what you discovered.
Okay, so by no means I'm an expert, but here are some facts I gathered. So today's penny is basically zinc-coated, copper-plated zinc, and basically is worth nothing. But there are some very rare pennies out there that if you're willing to dive through and find, may have some value. So the particular penny that sold for $200,000, it was kind of a rare bird basically because in 1943, because of the war, they started making pennies out of steel. So they needed the copper for the war, so they started making them with the steel. But there was a rare amount of them, very rare, that were actually made of copper. So if you have a 1943, if you happen to be the one person out there that has a 1943 penny that is copper, true copper, it has some value. For instance, $200,000 at this recent auction.
So do they think there are other pennies out there like that, or was that just a one-off?
Well, certainly whenever a mint is making, you know what a mint is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, like the little letters on your penny, there's a D, that's for Denver Mint, the P is for Philadelphia, and then on pennies, they actually made some in San Francisco, so there's an S out there. So those will actually be on the penny right underneath the date. But basically when they run these pennies through the mint, they're not just making one. So of course they make one to see if it works, but when they run a batch, they run a batch. So, but these copper ones, there's like, remember there's only like 20 of them out there. There's a very small amount of these out there.
Okay.
So for you to actually have one would be a rarity, but here's a foolproof way to find out. So in 1943 there was steel, and we just happen to have a penny collection in our gallery auction right now. So we had a couple of these steel pennies, so this is a perfect example of how to show you how to see if you have a very rare penny. So 1943, they would have been made out of steel, and they'd do this with a magnet. They'd stick to it. So if you happen to have a 1943 that looks copper but won't stick to a magnet, you're in luck. But if you have one that sticks to a magnet, that means that somebody just dipped it in copper to maybe see if they could pass it off as one of these expensive ones. So there are a lot of fakes out there with coins or any kind of sports memorabilia, anything we've ran into. You know, there can be a lot of fakes. So you have to do your research, and you have to know kind of grades and that kind of stuff. And that's where you bring in an expert. So basically, that's kind of how that works. There's all kinds of neat like penny things, and I was gathering penny facts all morning. But
right? Okay.
So there's all different kinds of things because the likelihood of you finding a 1943 copper penny is very rare. But if you happen to be bored and not have anything else to do, there's other things you can find that are a lot easier to find. So, for instance, like 1992, there was a close A&M on the back. So on the back of the penny where it says United States of America, the M is actually like really close to the A, and that was actually a mint error. So there's some of those floating around. So that's one that is a newer penny that you could possibly find in just your regular change. So there's a lot of, like when these pennies are being produced, they're going through at high rates, and sometimes they get double, basically like double minted or double dyed is what they call it. And that'll basically be like where it'll almost be like you're reading the words, but they're blurred. Like, so trust will be written almost like twice or be really thick. And when you have that, it's called a double dye. And so like that'll be on like the trust. There's multiple years where this happens, and those can actually have a little bit of value. So anyways, there's all different kinds of things you can think about. Basically, you're after old pennies and really odd ones.
Right. So if there's any irregularities, then that might make them rare and
Pretty much.
possibly have more values.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay. All right. Very good. Well, thank you very much, Jake, for doing that research. And you know, I think it is interesting that this rare penny sold for $200,000, and that's one thing we like to point out about auctions if something is rare in limited supply, the best way to determine the fair market value for that is through the auction process. Certainly anytime a record price is set for any type of asset, it is through the auction process, that competitive bidding. So if you do have an asset that you think might have some value and is rare, feel free to give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about that and see if it is something that might have value. So again, thank you for watching. Thanks, Jake, for your research, and we'll see you soon.